Does anyone remember Mercurochrome? Yes, right? For those of you that don't remember Mercurochrome, it was this stuff that my mom used to put on every scratch, nick, and scrape I ever got. And it was orange. And I used to lavishly put that on anything I had. It was almost like a badge of courage, was it not? Like, it was so cool. Like, I wanted the attention of the Mercurochrome to show that something was broken in me. In the same way, when I was a kid, there was a period of time I wore an ace bandage on my arm for no reason. There was nothing wrong with the arm. Come on, am I the only one who did this weird stuff? You all did it. You're just not admitting it, right? I wore the ace bandage on my arm because I just thought it was kind of cool and I wanted someone to ask me what was wrong with my arm. Recently, I heard of someone that I know who even pretended to fail an eyeglass exam when he was young. He misread the letters on the, what's the lowest line you can see on purpose because he thought that wearing glasses would be really cool and he wanted some. Luckily, for his family's financial situation, right? Who wants to pay for glasses your child doesn't need? And imagine if that went through all the challenges. Luckily, they saw through his scheme and he didn't get the glasses. When we're young sometimes, I also remember I wanted scars. My parents used to say, now imagine this lily pale skin I have. My parents used to say, don't pick at your, don't pick at it. You're going to leave a scar. Well, I wanted the scar. So, because I thought it was really cool, I'd have something to talk about when I got older. I could talk about the scar. Well, that was when I fell off my bike or whatever. It was cool back then. But then something happens. We get a little older. And maybe the brokenness and the things that we experience can't be covered by Mercurochrome. And suddenly, we want to hide everything that's wrong with us, or that we perceive as being wrong with us. Suddenly, our brokenness is an embarrassment to us. I can't tell you how many people come through the door of the church and say, well, the place didn't burn down, we're okay. When I was in high school, let's just say I wasn't exactly pastor material. I was voted the rowdiest, most rowdy, me and Billy Brooker. I was a female version of that. I didn't make the best choices. And I thank God there was no social media at that time. Thank you, Lord. I'm sure my bad choices would have been perpetuated by bad choices with sharing them all on social media. I know I've told this story before, but recently some dear friends of mine met into someone who now lives in Exeter, who grew up in the same town that I grew up in, and she was 2 years younger than me, and good friends with some of my good friends, and so we ran in some of the same circles. And when my friends made the connection that Amy was from Plymouth, and you can Google it all, nothing went in the papers, so you're not gonna find any more dirt than I'm willing to tell you. But when they made the connection that Amy was from Plymouth, and they said, oh, you must know Patty Marsden, Patty Atherton. She's the pastor of Newmarket Community Church. Amy was drinking and spit out her drink and said, what? God has a way. God has a way. I make light of my own brokenness, but I know that we come to this place with serious brokenness. We come with our own wounds and afflictions of sorts. Worry and anxiety, health concerns, addictions, financial troubles, relationship troubles. In fact, we all go through times of brokenness. Every single one of us, whether we're going through one right now or not. There are times when life is hard. Brokenness and suffering is a part of life. It will happen whether we seek it or not. But the good news is that God works in spite of and through it all. In our reading today, we hear a passage from the Apostle Paul, and I have to tell you, for those of you that, some of you probably know some of Paul's story, but he didn't have it easy. In addition to that vivacious personality he had some physical afflictions. We don't exactly know what they were, but they were easily seen. I get the sense he wasn't easy to look at all the time. And the people in Corinth sometimes held that against him. They thought maybe that his message wasn't right, and that maybe some of his physical afflictions were the punishment for what he was trying to do. But Paul said in this letter to the Corinthians that his trials were exactly what real faith looks like. He says, we have this treasure in clay jars so that we may be made clear, that it may be clear to us that anything extraordinary that comes from us, that extraordinary, wonderful stuff, comes from God. It doesn't come from us. When he compared himself to a clay pot or jar, he was essentially saying, I'm just the container. I'm just the container of this wonderful message of the gospel. How things look aren't exactly what's most important. And Paul invited everyone to focus on the treasure of his message instead. I keep thinking that, if anything, that poor church in Corinth, but I think we're so much like them, aren't we? If we're really honest. We spend so much time evaluating the appearance of things. Sometimes so much so that we don't even take time to understand what's inside. Our friends and neighbors. So as I've been studying and beginning this new series, I learned in this context of brokenness something new, which is new to me. And it's the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the areas of breakage with lacquer dusted with mixed of powdered gold, silver, or platinum, and it's called kintsugi. You can say that, kintsugi. Say it out loud, because I'm going to have problems probably pronouncing this throughout the kintsugi. So as a philosophy, kintsugi treats breakage and repair as part of the history of an object. And each one of you, for those of you that came into the sanctuary this morning, got a little card and a rock from Rob. Hopefully you have your little cards, and you'll see on the little card a picture of a bowl, and you'll see lines through the bowl. That is an example of kintsugi, where the lines were filled with beautiful gold, platinum, or silver. So as a philosophy, it treats the breakage and repair as part of the history of an object rather than something to disguise. It's an embracing of the flawed or imperfect. It's a valuing of the marks of wear, even highlighting the cracks and repairs rather than allowing the bowl or vase or whatever to be considered broken and something to discard. It's kind of leads to the adage of waste not, want not. But what a very different philosophy than what we're used to, wouldn't you say? I can't tell you how much in my Facebook feed is trying to cover all the cracks, right? Has anyone seen the Per Bell commercials? Anyone? No one. Maybe they just target me. It's women like me and you. It's like normal people who get this new foundation, and they show a close-up video of them putting the foundation on their face. No one has seen this. No one here. Someone online has to have seen it. I just can't see your comments right now. And the whole idea is that they're trying to hide all the cracks, right? Everything in marketing is about, let's try to hide our cracks, our brokenness. The tummy control pants, the extra stretchy pants, the lift and shape, and the whatever. I could keep going on, but everything is about hiding our imperfections, covering them. This idea of kintsugi is different. It's recognizing that those parts of us that are cracked and not perfect are a part of what makes us our unique selves and very perfect, right? So when connecting this idea of kintsugi, which I really love this idea of highlighting the cracks, I just think it's such a beautiful thing. It's freeing in a way. When we connect that to the treasure of clay jars, or our treasure in clay jars, the treasure here, of course, is Jesus. And as human beings, we, like clay jars, are fragile. But God chooses us as vessels to carry the good news of the gospel. In the story of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, we can clearly see that God works through those that are broken. In verses 8 and 9, they describe what it looks like, and it says, even though we are broken, afflicted, perplexed, persecuted, and struck down, God puts us back together. God doesn't let our brokenness define us in a negative way. We're not crushed. We're not driven to despair. We're not forsaken. We're not destroyed. And as I say that, I can only think of the people in Ukraine fighting so hard. I've been so inspired by the people of Ukraine fighting for their freedom and their country. How terrifying it must be. But the strength that we're seeing of people standing up. I love one of the early quotes of their president when someone offered to get him out of Ukraine. And he said, I'm not looking for a ride. I'm looking for support here. I need help. I'm not looking for a ride out. He wasn't about to leave his people. For the life of Jesus to be made visible in our bodies, it doesn't mean that our jars become perfectly smooth, as if we were never broken. That's not what life is about. We take the experiences of our brokenness, those things that have been so hard for us to move through. And with each chink in the armor, so to speak, we're strengthened, are we not? Have you ever lived through something that you said, my God, I didn't think I could do that? Yeah, I see some of you nodding, and I know some of your stories. You've lived through things you never thought you could. And after, you have seams, those seams that are filled with gold, platinum, or silver, those seams that strengthen you, almost as if it's evidence of God's work working in your life. God's work in and through us. And I believe we can trust from that moment, from these moments that we work through, that God will never abandon us. And it gives us hope. God will never abandon us. So what are the places that need healing for you today? Where do you need to have a little bit of gold, silver, or platinum poured into you? As we begin our Lenten journey, these 40 days before Easter, this is our time to intentionally work on our faith, work on our relationship with God, and find ways to grow closer to God. How can you open yourself up to this invitation of Lent this year? How will you allow God to fill your cup and pour God self into you? Barbara Taylor Brown is a theologian and author I very much appreciate. I think she says it well when she says, no one longs for what she or he already has, and yet the accumulated insight of those wise about the spiritual life suggests that the reason so many of us cannot see the red X that marks the spot is because we're standing right on it. The treasure we seek requires no lengthy expedition, no expensive equipment, no superior aptitude or special company. All that we lack is the willingness to imagine that we already have everything we need. All that we lack is the willingness to imagine that we already have everything we need. Paul had no illusions about his life. He suffered affliction, perplexity, persecution. But he stood tall in that place. He told the Corinthians he carried Jesus' body in his body, Jesus' death in his body, so that people could also see Jesus' life in his body. Paul saw physical problems as well as spiritual and emotional struggles as everyday ways that we can identify with Christ's suffering and death. Likewise, moments of joy and delight, of forgiveness and reconciliation open a window to new life right here and right now. I believe Paul this morning is urging us to take a good look, a good long look at ourselves and discover the treasure that God has placed right there in our own clay jars. That treasure right there inside of you. My prayer is that you have eyes to see it and a heart to share it with others. May it be so. Amen.